Turn with me. I've got such a simple little message today. I've been reading the parables, and I've been reading them in terms of what did I not know? What caught me by surprise? What new thought did I have? I've heard the parables all my life. I don't really want to come in here another sermon on the same old stuff I've heard 30 times. If you're going to do that, just give me a DVD and I'll go home and watch it, sleep a little later on Sunday. But I've been reading, I'm looking for what's different here. So I want to read from Matthew 25, a parable that, again, I've heard all my life. But 2 or 3 things I've learned that are a little different in the last few days, all right? So I'm going to start in verse 14. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a man going to a far country, and he called together his servants, and he gave them his goods. To one he gave 5 talents, and to another he gave 2 talents, and to another he gave 1 talent, to every man according to his ability, and then he went on his journey. And he that received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made 5 more talents. And he that got 2 talents gained 2 more. But he that got 1 talent dug in the dirt, and hid the Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came back, and he began to account with them. And he that received 5 talents came and brought the other 5 and said, Lord, you gave me 5 talents, and I've gained 5 more. And the Lord said, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. And he that received 2 talents came and said, Lord, you gave me 2 talents, and I've gained 2 more besides those. And the Lord said, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. You enter into the joy of the Lord. And the one who got 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew that you're a hard man, and you reap where you did not sow, and you gather where you did not spread straw. And I was afraid. I went and hid the talent in the earth. And so here is the talent that belonged to you. And the Lord answered and said, You wicked and slothful, that's kind of like lazy, wasteful servant. You knew that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. So then you should have put my money to the exchangers, and when I came back, I would have got my money back with interest. So take this talent from him and give it to the one that has 10. For to every one that has shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from the one that has not shall be taken away even that what he has. And cast this worthless servant into outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth." There's obviously a lot in there to say, and obviously I don't want to try to say it all. I'm going to assume that some certain part of that is obvious. That you kind of read it and you understand that God gives us talents, and the question is, what are we going to do with those? How are you going to respond with that? It intrigues me that the guy who got 5 and 2 and even the 1, they didn't get into any kind of comparison. I have to admit that's always been a little bit of a problem for me. There are things that I want to do in church that I can't do. I'd love to sing in the choir. I'd love to be the soloist in the choir. Well, there may come a day I sing in the choir, but it ain't going to be as a soloist. It's just not a talent God gave me. Maybe you can train those things. I don't know. When I was 9, 10, or 11, I took piano lessons. I'd like to be able to play the piano in church. I wish I could sit down and play a couple of hymns and we'd just all play along. Joe would play the drums, David would strum the guitar. We'd just have a little ragtime band and we'd come to church and have a little hoedown. You know, I'll just tell you, and you won't like this, I'm sure, because we're Baptist. But I kept thinking when Tim was playing the music yesterday, that was good music. You know, I'd like for us, I'd like at 2 o'clock we'd have a dance line. At 3 o'clock we'd have another dance line. And can you imagine all those little 6-year-olds watching the old people get up and dance? But here's the problem. I can't dance. Never could. We could have all the dance lines we have. I couldn't dance. Somebody came to me yesterday and said, when we expand Trunk or Treat, are we going to, when it's all over, have open bar at Trip and Susan's? So I don't think so. There are things I'd like to do in church, and I get jealous of people who can do it. You know, one of the things now, I got to tell you, Mike Speck just blesses my heart. Everything about Mike. And I laugh and I cry and, you know, I get them all mixed up. I'm crying and I'm laughing and I'd love to do what Mike Speck does. I'd love to be able to get up and lead a crowd just to see God and worship God, but I can't. And I like that these folks didn't grumble about what gift they didn't get. You know, they just took their talent and went out and did with it what they were going to do. That's who we're really called to be. Take the talent God gives you. Take what God has equipped you to do and be excited and go do it. You know, I may have this all wrong theologically. I don't know. I believe that Jesus Christ saved me from my sins. But I also believe that He saved me in this life. That being a child of God ought to matter from today until the day I go under the grass and George mows over me. You know, you may have seen every now and then George will have a big old cigar in his mouth when he's out there mowing. He'll have his headphones on, big old cigar about that long. He'll be out there just mowing. And all I can imagine is when I'm out there, George's going to stop on my grave and flip those ashes off every time. You know what? We might mix them in with Connie's ashes, George, because she told me yesterday she wants to be cremated and put on the mantle. Well, I'll cremate her, but she ain't living on the mantle. I don't know where she'll be, but it ain't going to be on. Then she said she was going to make it into a necklace that I could wear with her ashes in the necklace. Yeah, you just get cremated with any dream you need to have when you're laying there burning. I'll be deciding what happens to those ashes if you go first, which, you know, men typically go first because we are under so much more stress than the women are. We usually die first. But, you know, I love that they got excited about what they were doing. You know, folks, I believe when you really get the love of God down in your heart, there's an excitement about serving God. You love coming out and doing things. You love coming out Friday night and doing fireworks. You love coming out and making hot dogs and s'mores, and you love being with God's people, and there is an excitement about life, and God saves you not just from your sin, but God saves you from your mundane, run-of-the-mill, every day is the same. I read a quote I want to read to you I really like. It said, normal life is getting dressed in clothes that you buy for work, and you drive through bad traffic in a car that you're still paying for in order to get to the job that you need to pay for the clothes in the car and for the house that you leave vacant all day so you can afford to live in it. Well, that's about That's about how people's lives are lived. And God comes along to bring us a new sense of excitement. You find your gift and you learn to use it. I don't know if you remember what it was like when when you had kids and they would discover their toes. You know, it was like, wow, they found a new part. Or when they were little and it was the first time rain hit them in the face. And you watch that excitement as they grew. And even as they grow older, you watch as they learn, as they discover what God's given them to do. There's an excitement in my life about finding what God's given us to do and getting to go do it. You know, getting to serve the Lord the way He means for us to serve. But now make no mistake, in this passage, there is a judgment day. There is a day that the Lord comes back. It's a day of accounting. I'm interested that Jesus gave them different amounts. You know, I'm convinced, and we talked in Sunday school this morning, God doesn't ask us to do things we're not equipped to do. You know, God doesn't ask me to be the song leader. God doesn't ask me to sing the solo. I'm not equipped to do that. God doesn't ask that the church tackle something it just can't tackle. If God asks us to do it, He'll equip us to do it. And I like that everybody got to go out and do their own thing with their own talent. Holy cow. If we could just get people who don't have certain talents to leave the people alone who do have them. You know, I don't know how to sing. I can't take the praise band aside and say, oh, you need to do this. I might tell them what I would like and all that, but I can't go to Joe and Chance and say, do you know you were flat on this note? I can't do that. By the way, one of my favorite things last week, what was the girl's name? Melina, yeah. I've known Mike Speck for 25 years. I've watched him sing hundreds of times. He's very professional. He's actually, in real life, he's a perfectionist. And on that song they messed up so bad, Melina sat there and said, you know, I never could find my part. And Mike, in typical Mike fashion, Mike turned to her and said, in 4 minutes you couldn't find your part? And I thought, yep, that's the Mike Speck I know. And then Melina turned back to him and said, I think that's because you were on it for all 4 minutes. Yeah, see, she can have that criticism. I can't. There's I don't know if it was a Facebook post that went around some time ago that ended by saying something like, you worry about yourself. That's kind of the sense that this passage brings into our lives. Everybody got different gifts. Let them do their gift and you do your gift. Don't worry about telling them how to do their gift. You know, just focus on and concentrate on what God's brought to your life. Notice, though, that this third servant was different. This third servant didn't understand his talent. Didn't do anything with his talent. Didn't have one bit of use for it. In fact, it interests me a lot that when the Lord came back, the third servant said, it's your fault. Said, I didn't go and do anything with this talent because I knew you were a hard man and I was afraid of you. And I went and dug in the dirt and hid the talent. Now just think for a minute of God giving a Christian person a talent and that person saying, well, God, I knew you were hard, so I didn't do anything with that talent. I just hid it. And the scripture says literally when the Lord comes back, He says, you've been worthless. He told the first two, well done, thou good and faithful servant. It'd be funny, we'd put on a stone out in the back. You know, there's 1 out of 5 says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. You know, it's one of the passages we'd put on somebody's stone, goodbye, thou worthless servant. The Lord said, that he was worthless, that he accomplished nothing. Can you imagine? What a horrible thing to have said when it's all said and done. But there you are with the Lord coming back and accounting. What are you going to say you did with your talent when he comes back? You're going to say you did something with it, or you're going to say you buried it in the sand? But now let me talk to you about 2 things or 3 things I learned from this passage that were new to me. It might be illustrated. Do you know the story? There's a story floats around called The Seed. It's a short story. A guy named Jim is the vice president of the corporation. The president, the CEO, calls the 5 vice presidents together one day and says, now I'm getting ready to retire, and one of you 5 is going to be the new CEO. And I'm going to give you all this seed, and you take it home and you nurse it. You do the best with it you know how to do. You bring it back here in a year, and I'll decide who's going to be the new CEO. So they all take it home. Jim goes home, starts watering his seed. Nothing happens. Goes out to the hardware store, gets some fertilizer, puts fertilizer on it, waters it again. Nothing happens. He tries to grow that seed for a solid year. Nothing ever happens. So he decides when the day comes that the CEO is going to decide, Jim's decision is, I'm not even taking my pot back. My pot ain't got nothing but dirt in it. There's no seed, there's no production, there's no nothing. But his wife tells him, well, you got to take it back. So he gets back, and the 4 guys in front of him have got big old pots with big old flowers like this. They're just out everywhere. They're looking terrific. And the CEO stops and says, hey, Jim, come up here. And he says, what you guys don't know is I gave all 5 of you dead seeds last year. I want to see which one of you had enough integrity to come to me at the end of the year and say, I couldn't do anything with my seed. And so it's a test here of, do your actions match your words? Do you just talk about growth? Do you just talk about serving God? Or do your actions, integrity by definition is when your actions are the same as your words. So that said, there's a thing or 2 here I want to point out. I want you to notice, if Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is like this, I want you to notice that everybody in the kingdom got a talent. It means everybody matters. It's important to us when you bring your talent to the Lord. It's important to the kingdom. It's important to the body. I'm not sure what yours is, but you need to find it and you need to invest it. Don't just let it lie dormant. Don't just let it lay like it's a dead seed. Everybody got a gift. Think about it. It means you're here on purpose. It means that the couple that sat right back here last week and said, we're coming to church here. This is going to be our church. It means that if they come, God brought them on purpose. They didn't just happen to wander by and say, oh, it's pretty and it's got a nice yard and I like the flowers out in the islands. It means God brought them here. It matters that the body is put together. I've discovered, and I've told you before, you discover in your life that every part of your body matters. I told you, and I sound like such a whiner when I say it. But somehow in all my nerve disruption, my right big toe has become the center of my pain. Drives me nuts. Hurts just about all the time. Your right big toe, is that really your biggest complaint? But it matters to me. I know it's just, only about that long. But it hurts. And it hurts every day. And so it matters, which means that every part of my body matters to me. I sound vain. You wouldn't think that 70 years old, oh, sorry, Christy, I don't mean to mention age today. You wouldn't think that 70 years old and vanity would go in the same sentence. But they do. I don't like being bald-headed. No offense, Edgar. I don't like being bald. I wish I had my hair back. I even wish I had my fake hair back. You know, I don't like that. Everything about my body matters to me. You know, maybe you don't, but you know there comes a time when you get those big old brown spots. I don't like that. Makes me look old. I didn't like the day they told me I needed bifocals. Bifocals are for old people. And they said, well, we'll get you some without a line. Well, big deal. They're still bifocals. I didn't like that. The point is just that everything about my body matters to me, and you are described as the body of Christ. What would make you think you don't matter to Christ? You know, what a horrible thing to go through life thinking you don't matter. If you don't matter to anybody else, I know you matter to Christ, and I know you matter to His body, and that means that in some sense you matter to me. Somehow, the church is put together like a body. But then I have to tell you a second thing real quickly that struck me this week, or this last week, yeah, pretty much, is that a talent is really money. We spiritualize it and we make it sound like it's our gifts and abilities and all that, but it really, in this passage, it is money. It is Jesus saying, have you managed to get a generous spirit as part of your life? I'll tell you what, folks. For me, Connie will tell you, we've talked about it for 30 years probably. It's not a new thing. For me, the worst sign of a church is when it doesn't have a generous spirit. When it just doesn't catch on that you've been given so that you can give. You've been, you know, folks, I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to tithe to a church that puts it in the bank. You put it in, now I understand you got to have a little bit in the bank. I get that. But, I mean, look at the size of this church. Who knows how much we have in the bank total? Kelly probably. Would you be surprised to know that it's in the neighborhood of $250,000? That's pitiful. $250,000 for what? We're worried about a flood? We'll replace the whole thing for $250,000. I told Tyler when I left him here by himself last week, don't burn the building down. Chance told him if he did, start on this side. You know, folks, a church, a Christian, needs a generous spirit. I had a great friend several years ago, again, Connie will tell you, a great friend who was an orthodontist, made a ton of money. Made money he didn't even know how to spend. But if you talked about, Father, receive this. But if you talked about money, man, he wouldn't give $5. When Mike Speck came through here, he wouldn't give $5 in a love offering. He'd go out and make $20,000 a week. You know, the orthodontist yesterday told me if I'd come in, she'd do me a crown. She said, take me about 2 hours, cost you $1,100. And I thought, so that's $550 an hour, woman. That's a lot. That's a lot. You know, one of the signs, I believe this parable teaches us, one of the signs of closeness to God is a generous spirit. Do you know that a talent was more than a lifetime of wages? More than you could earn in a year. In a lifetime. And that's what God's given. And so I want to just close with this last thing that I've learned. I've learned everybody got a gift. I've learned we need a generous spirit in the kingdom of God. And the last thing I just want to mention, I can't believe He gave me a gift. I can't believe He saved me and then He gave me a gift. Man, I was happy just to get saved. You know, just save my soul. Let me not worry about being cast into fire and brimstone. And then of all things, He gave me a gift. He gave me some kind of, I don't know how you define it. Man, this is a great, big, lavish God I serve. I'm not qualified to have a gift, are you? You know, and He gave us this gift and He said, go use it. I read a definition this week that a gift is whatever the Lord gives you today that He'll ask you about later. So when He shows up and He says, what'd you do with that? Fill in the blank. You're going to have to say nothing? Or are you going to be able to say, well, Lord, here's what I've done. So I want to close. I just want to emphasize for me, you know, I've heard that thing of doing what you do with your gifts all my life. But I'm intrigued this week to learn everybody got a gift. You know, do what God gifts you to do. Do what God equips you to do. And I've learned that God expects us to have a generous spirit. Man, I know some of you got no money. I'm not preaching on money. I'm preaching on spirit. You got no money? I understand you put $1 in the offering plate. I get that. I understand that completely. What I don't understand is people who begrudge the dollar. People who argue and can't get straight in their mind. Man, my spirit wants to give more than I do. My spirit, my attitude, my heart, I don't want to be greedy. You know, in the business I run, I don't want to be that person who fights with people over $3. They come in to get 12 shirts and you tell them $6.25 and they say, can I get it for $6? And you say, do I look like a flea market? You know, I don't want to be that person who argues over 25 cents a shirt 12 times. I want to be a generous spirit person. And I want to be that person who invests what God gives me to do and goes out there and does something with it. So we're going to sing. I just call you to review in your life the gift God has given you. What's God ask of you? He doesn't ask you to do stuff He didn't equip you to do. What's He expect from you? What is your gift? What is your attitude? What is your spirit? Is it generous? I mean, after all, the parable is directly about money. And then, what are you going to do with it? What's your response going to be? I love learning, spotting, realizing new things from the kingdom. Let's sing, You Come If the Lord Leads.